The stage door of Harwell University's Whitmore Recital Hall opened directly onto a narrow corridor that smelled of rosin dust and old brass. On the afternoon of the Regional Conservatory Scholarship auditions, that corridor was the most important 8 feet of real estate on campus. Walk through it and you were a finalist. Stand on the wrong side of it and you were nobody. Renata Sousa was standing near the door with a clipboard, a lanyard, and the low-grade dread of someone who had volunteered for a job she was no longer sure she understood. She was a second-year music student, a viola player from Brockton with a full ride of her own, and she had signed up to be an event usher because the coordinator had promised it would be simple. Check names, direct people, smile. She had not been told there would be moments that required her to decide who she was. The corridor filled steadily. 8 finalists between the ages of 15 and 17, the brightest young pianists in the region, all of them arriving with that particular held-breath look of people who have practiced 10,000 hours for one afternoon. Parents waited in the lobby. Faculty moved along the outer hall. Inside the hall itself, 3 judges sat at a long table, their water glasses catching the stage light, their folders open. Renata had already guided 4 finalists through, a tall boy with a Steinway tote bag, 2 girls in matching blazers, a nervous young man whose mother kept squeezing his shoulder at the lobby threshold. She had found each name on the master list, smiled, and waved them forward. Easy, simple, just as promised. Then Camille Osei walked up. She was 16 years old, though she carried herself with the particular stillness of someone who had learned early that composure was not optional. She wore a deep green dress, not elaborate, not showy, chosen the way serious musicians choose everything, for what it does, not what it says. Her hair was pinned. Her music folder was tucked under one arm. Her confirmation letter was in her other hand, visible and ready, the way you hold a ticket when you expect to be asked for it. She was not the last finalist to arrive. She was not late. She was precisely on time. Margaret Corbin, the program coordinator, stepped in front of her before Renata could speak. Margaret Corbin was 43 years old, had managed academic events at Harwell for 11 years, and wore a headset she did not need. She glanced at Camille the way certain people glance at things they have already decided about, a fraction of a second too fast to be a real look. Name. Camille Osei, Camille said. Her voice was even. She held out the confirmation letter. Margaret did not take it. I'm going to need you to step to the side for a moment. There's a question with your paperwork. What question? Camille asked, still even, still quiet. It wasn't fully processed through the registrar's verification system. It's a procedural thing. We're going to have you wait in the preparation room down the hall until we sort it out. Which step wasn't completed? Camille asked. The question was not loud. It was not aggressive. It was the kind of question that only sounds simple until you realize it requires a specific answer, and Margaret Corbin did not have one. She had a headset and a clipboard and an expression of practiced administrative authority, but she did not have an answer. It's a system issue, she said. We'll have it resolved quickly. The preparation room is comfortable. My audition time is in 12 minutes, Camille said. If there's a specific step that wasn't completed, I'd like to know what it is so we can address it now. Margaret's jaw moved slightly. As I said, it's a procedural matter. I have my confirmation letter, Camille said. She held it out again, steadily, not as a supplication but as evidence. Renata was watching. She had gone still with the clipboard pressed to her chest. 2 more finalists had passed through the stage door in the last 4 minutes. Both of them checked off the master list in 5 seconds. Both of them waved through without any question of any kind. Renata had done the checking herself. She had not asked either of them for a confirmation letter, because the master list was the master list, and the names on it were the names on it. She looked down at her clipboard now. Margaret's voice had dropped slightly, the register of someone who has made a decision and wants to close the conversation. If you'll just follow me to the preparation room, I can get someone to run the re-verification, and we'll have you back here in plenty of time." "I'll wait here," Camille said. Not loud, not heated, just the facts of the matter, stated plainly, by a 16-year-old in a green dress who had traveled 40 minutes by train with her music folder and her confirmation letter and her 10,000 hours, and who was not, in fact, going to follow anyone into a side room. Renata's finger found the O section of the master list. Osai Camille, scholarship finalist piano, 2:15 p.m. slot. There it was, printed cleanly in the same font as every other name in the same column with the same check-in notation. There was no flag. There was no asterisk. There was no note of any kind indicating that anything at all was unresolved. Margaret was saying something about how this was really the simplest path forward, and Renata heard it from a small distance, the way you hear a conversation when your body has gone ahead of your mind. She heard it, and she looked at the name on the list, and she looked at the girl in the green dress standing quietly in the corridor with her music folder under her arm and her confirmation letter still extended in her hand. Then she heard herself speak. "Excuse me." The words came out steadier than she expected. "Ms. Corbin, I have Camille Ose on the master list. Slot 215. There's no flag on the entry." Margaret turned. She looked at Renata in the way people with headsets look at people with clipboards, which is to say, as an obstacle. "The list may not reflect the registrar update," she said. "I'm handling this." "The list is the official check-in document," Renata said. "I was told to use it for all finalists." Her voice was doing something she had not authorized it to do, which was continue. "If her name is on the list with no flag, I don't have a basis to hold her from the stage entrance." The corridor had gone quiet. A faculty member passing the outer hall slowed and looked through the window. One of the earlier finalists who was already inside had turned at the noise and was watching through the small door pane. Margaret Corbin stepped slightly toward Renata. "I will handle the situation," she said, very carefully. It was at precisely that moment that the lobby door at the far end of the corridor opened. Dr. Noel Ose was a tall man with the kind of unhurried walk that suggests a person has been the most important one in many rooms and has stopped needing to announce it. He wore a dark suit and a visitor lanyard, the kind issued to board members for campus events, and he was carrying 2 cups of coffee from the faculty lounge, because his daughter had mentioned she was nervous and he thought she might want one. He saw Camille in the corridor. He saw her standing outside the stage door. He saw the extended confirmation letter in her hand. He did not move quickly. He covered the distance between the lobby door and the stage entrance at the same unhurried pace, and then he stood beside his daughter, and he looked at Margaret Corbin, and he said quietly, "Is there a difficulty?" The lanyard read, "Dr. and Osai Board of Trustees." Margaret Corbin's face did something complicated. The headset suddenly felt, Renata thought, less like authority and more like equipment. There was a question with the registration," Margaret said. "In the registrar system." "Her name is on the master list," Renata said. She had not planned to speak again. She said it anyway. "It's been there all day, no flag, I checked it myself." Dr. Osai looked at Renata. There was something in his expression that was not yet gratitude and not yet anger, something more deliberate than either, the look of a man taking precise account of what has happened. Then he looked at his daughter. Camille had not moved. She still had the confirmation letter in her hand. She had been standing in this corridor for nearly 9 minutes and her face had not changed, not frightened, not tearful, not trembling, just still. The way a person is still when they know exactly what is true and are content to let the truth do its own work. "Go tune," her father said. She looked at Renata. Renata stepped aside from the stage door and held it open. Camille Osai walked through. What happened next happened in the register of institutional consequence, which is quieter than a slap and heavier than a shout. Dr. Osai did not raise his voice. He made 2 phone calls in the outer corridor, standing near the window, speaking in the measured tone of a man who chairs committees for a living. The first call was to the Vice President of Academic Affairs, whose office was in the building directly across the quadrangle. The second call was to the chair of the Scholarship Review Committee, a woman named Dr. Fenwick, who had been in the room when Harwell's board passed the scholarship program's founding charter, and who did not like surprises. The VP of Academic Affairs, a precise and efficient woman named Loretta Park, arrived in the corridor 11 minutes later. She spoke briefly with Margaret Corbin. She spoke at somewhat greater length with Dr. Osai. She took Margaret's headset and event credentials before the conversation had fully concluded, in the unhurried, non-theatrical way of a person clearing a desk. Margaret Corbin left the building before Camille's audition was over. Renata sat in the back row of Whitmore Hall for the rest of the afternoon. She was technically still on volunteer duty, but there was nothing left to usher. All the finalists were inside. The door was monitored by a faculty proctor, and Dr. Park had told her, not unkindly, to take a seat and stay available. She sat and she listened. Camille Osai played at 2:21 p.m., 6 minutes late, and gave no outward indication that she had spent the previous 9 of them standing in a corridor holding a confirmation letter. She played a Chopin nocturne and a movement from a Prokofiev sonata, and the hall was very quiet in the particular way that means something is happening that people will remember. One of the judges leaned forward during the Prokofiev. Another set down her pen. Renata did not know much about Prokofiev. She knew enough to know that the girl playing it had not broken. The board's formal response came at the following month's trustees' meeting, at which Dr. Noel Ose recused himself from the relevant votes. The board authorized a 5-year audit of intake records across all competitive scholarship programs, to be conducted by an independent firm retained by the provost's office. The audit's mandate was to identify any pattern of procedural irregularity in applicant screening, with particular attention to the gap between digital registration records and in-person event access. The board also adopted a dual verification protocol for all scholarship auditions. Every finalist's eligibility to be confirmed against both the registrar's digital record and the event master list by a faculty proctor, independent of the event coordinator, with any discrepancy to be escalated immediately to the supervising VP rather than resolved at the coordinator level. The policy passed 11-0. Margaret Corbin's employment at Harwell University ended by mutual agreement in the same month, following a review conducted by the Office of Human Resources in consultation with the Title VI compliance officer. The scholarship was awarded 3 weeks after the audition at a small ceremony in the same Whitmore Hall. Camille Osai was announced as the recipient by the dean of the conservatory, who read her judge's comments aloud. Unanimous, remarkable, the kind of composure one judge had written that you cannot teach. Renata Sousa was in the 3rd row. She had not been invited, she had simply come, the way you go back to a place where something important happened to see how it ended. Camille walked to the stage. She stood at the microphone and thanked the judges and the faculty and her parents. She was brief and specific and not given to large gestures. Before she sat down, she looked out at the hall and said one quiet thing: "I'm glad I waited." The hall was not quiet the way it had been during the Prokofiev. It was a different kind of quiet, the kind that comes when something has been said that cannot be unsaid and does not need to be repeated. Renata drove home to Brockton that night with her clipboard on the passenger seat and the image of a green dress standing absolutely still in a corridor, confirmation letter in hand, waiting for the truth to do its own work. She thought she understood now what kind of room it was possible to be.